Michael, we are live on YouTube, and when you're ready, you may begin, or if you'd like to let folks know about possible delay for this meeting.
Sounds good. Thank you, Sean. Staff, how are we looking on quorum? I see Mike, I see Dan. So we have Karen, me, that's 4.
That's correct.
4, so yeah, I think we're good to go.
And 4 is quorum?
Correct.
Okay. All right, guys, so we're just waiting. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, the phone might also be Jim. I'm trying to see it.
Yeah, usually iPhone is Jim. Everybody just bear with us. We're waiting on a couple more board members to show up before we get started tonight. Hopefully they'll be here shortly and we'll be able to get going.
Sandra, I see that the person on the phone, if the person on the phone could press *69.
Okay, Karen Walton and Robert Walton are on. We're the owners of 1627.
Okay, thank you. Michael Scott will not be in attendance this evening, so.
All right, well, I guess we can just get started then. Okay, well, welcome to tonight's Design Review Board meeting, September 21st, 2021. We'll be holding this meeting virtually, as you guys all can tell. I have a quorum of 4 members of our 8 panel. 8 board members, right, Cam, is what we have? Or do we have 7 still?
7.
So 4 of 7 is quorum. I would like to see if there's any approval of tonight's agenda on the floor. So Mike motions to approve it. Karen seconds it. Everyone in favor, say aye. Aye. All right, the agenda passes tonight. Do we have approval of any last meeting's minutes, staff?
Yes, there are 4 minutes to approve: August 17th, 24th, September 7th, and September 14th.
Okay, I motion to approve those 4 meeting minutes. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Everyone in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, those meeting minutes pass. Now I'm looking for any general member comments that do not apply to any application tonight. I don't think anyone registered with staff, so I think we should be good to go. All right, so first item on the agenda is a new design guideline discussion for electrical vehicle charging stations. We're having the public hearing on this. This is something we've been working on, so I assume, Cam, you're going to present this?
I am going to give a quick intro and then open it up to comments from members, and we would ask to limit comments to 3 minutes per member that would like to make a comment during the public hearing.
Okay. These are a list of some people that registered to comment on this?
We do not.
Okay.
So hopefully everyone is pleased with what is being presented.
Okay.
Sandra, if you could pull that up for all of us. I'm just going to give a quick, brief introduction to it, and then open it up.
Okay.
Just so everyone is aware, earlier this year in January, the board gave staff a directive to create and assist specifically clusters in trying to facilitate a desire that members were requesting the installation of electric vehicle charging stations specifically in or around a cluster common area. But in developing and having a discussion with many members, we realized quickly that it wasn't just limited to members and clusters that were looking for electric vehicle charging stations. And so on that board directive, we've worked with a consultant, Kimley Horn, and also with other communities in our area and across the country, and trying to create a design guideline for electric vehicle charging stations. And if you're not familiar with community associations, you may be proud to know that Reston Association will more than likely be one of the first associations to have a design guideline that is strictly related to electric vehicle charging stations. So we're really happy about that. This guideline goes across all properties, and the lowest review level that we are proposing in this design guideline that was reviewed by the DRB in July and August and reviewed by the Board Operations Committee has a panel level review as the lowest level of review possible for electric vehicle charging station applications. We tried to focus on some generic or general rules of thumb when you think about the types of installations that you would want to see. And we kept it kind of narrow in terms of the type of installations that you could have, because number one, it's across all properties. So commercial, RA property, residential property, condo cluster, apartment common area, and then of course, your other facilities that are under RA's purview. And so we hope that this kind of encapsulates everything and is a culmination of what we've already seen and what the DRB has already approved within the community, but also because the type of installations electric vehicle charging stations have, there's a wide array of options across the community already and across the country in terms of these types of installations. So we've tried to keep it as broad but narrow, if that makes sense, to kind of control the type of installations and what were the big points or highlights that we wanted to make sure that we focused on. So we considered size, location, the actual physical unit. We discussed the pedestal, which is typically what the unit will rest upon. In some installations, you may have a unit attached to a garage, inside a garage, or on the side of the house. But most installations are probably going to be on pedestals, taking into consideration the appearance and the charging levels that these types of installations are permitted. Level 1 and level 2 charging stations are permitted in residential areas, unless in a parking structure or a Reston Association facility. There are some permits that are required in terms of these types of installations, especially when you're considering electrical as a part of that project. If you could go to the next slide or next page. We also took into consideration cables and cords, which is a big focus that we hear from our members the most, especially as it relates to having huge orange electrical cables extending over common areas or sidewalks that may be a liability or a safety issue. So we wanted to make sure that we address that in the design guideline. And then of course, the use of bollards or wheel stops to help protect the installation of the pedestal or the unit. We specifically pulled out the cluster condo apartment common area because we do understand that there are some communities within Reston Association that have assigned parking and in an effort to try and control the hodgepodge kind of look of various different types of installations within the community. We wanted to make sure that we are encouraging clusters to consider a parking plan that promotes cluster or group installations within their cluster owned areas. And then giving some helpful tidbits about carports and garages. Of course, those property owners that have carports and garages are encouraged to use those areas first, and then consider the alternatives afterwards, and then taking into consideration the removal. Then we have some application checklist things that we wanted to make sure that members were aware of what should be included with the application. So photo and specifications. If it is a joint application, so the installation would be on cluster common area, but the person who would be benefiting from it exclusively would be an individual member. That would require a joint application, specifically if the power was coming from the individual unit owner's home into the common area, things of that nature. Your general drawing, photographs, descriptions of the changes, and then going into some helpful additional information. The installation should be done by a qualified person. The DRB may require a maintenance agreement if the individual member in the cluster are doing a joint application. And then there were some considerations that we wanted to highlight that clusters should have when trying to use their common areas to help facilitate access to individual use that is exclusive to that member. It's important to note that last year, sometime in early spring, there was legislation passed that prohibits community associations from prohibiting access to electric vehicle charging stations on individually owned property. So if you're in a cluster like Marco, for example, where it's single family detached homes, but a cluster, there's some considerations that you might want to do in terms of a cluster standard potentially versus a single family home that doesn't have the same types of restrictions, but may want an installation that's outside of their garage. So there's some considerations that definitely need to be given across the board, but specifically within clusters. And then we used a little bit of imagery in the picture below to help identify parts so that members would be familiar when there's discussions happening around this design guideline, that they have quick reference to what those parts are identified and labeled as. So I will open it up to comments and feedback that we will be presenting to the Board Operations Committee at their October meeting.
Great, thank you, Cam. Does anybody have any public comment on this? Just raise your hand if you're in the Zoom. Staff can unmute you. And then if there's not any public comment, then we'll just go around our panel or our board really quickly. We've seen this a bunch, so I don't see anybody raising their hand. Staff, do you have the same? There are.
If we could do Barbara Happ.
Oh, there we go.
Okay, and video.
All right, Barbara, please state where your address is.
This is Norm Happ. I'm at 2045 Chadsford Drive in Reston. And I just had a comment about the use of the wheel stop versus the bollard, okay? I feel that if you have, say, maybe one charger or two chargers in a homeowners association parking lot, and you have a bollard, a wheel stop on the ground, particularly in dusk or in the evening, I think of that as one, it's a tripping hazard, and second, the placement of the wheel stop would only work for certain vehicles. If you get a delivery truck that backs into that parking space, it's going to hit the charger before it hits the wheel stops. So, it's I think it would not protect the charger the same as the bollards. And I also think that, if person is walking in that parking lot, there's not too many cars in the parking lot, and there's only one parking space that has a very dark wheel stop on the ground, that could be a tripping hazard. So that's my comment.
Thank you, sir. Very valid. I agree.
Thank you.
The next person we have is Carolyn Kirby. Hi, Carolyn. If you could just state your address for the record.
My computer is. Can you?
We can hear you.
I'm on Swans Neck Way, 2057.
Great, thank you.
And my question for Cam is, Are you suggesting that clusters that have common areas, the parking spaces are all part of the cluster common area, that they should also develop design standards as part of their cluster design standard, or just rely on what Ruston Association is establishing here?
Every community or cluster is going to be different. So having a cluster standard is not necessarily a requirement, and it may not even be encouraged depending upon the need. So it would be a case-by-case situation. So I don't think anyone is encouraging clusters to develop a cluster standard, but I would suggest that when there is a request for an electric vehicle charging station, specifically for clusters that do not have common area, but the installation could not be in a carport or a garage, it has to be on individual property, that the cluster would think about having a cluster standard.
So you would suggest the cluster consult with the covenants department on how to proceed?
Yes, that's always a case, an option available. So not every cluster is going to be a candidate for a cluster standard for electric vehicle charging stations. It just depends on the need and the desire. And then, of course, what is wanted by the cluster board.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Mary Sapp.